Okay.
No?
Yes.
Yes.
Start momentarily. We take a cup.
Good morning. Welcome. Thank you all for your support this morning. Our ASL interpreters this morning are Aaron Rice and Martha Feldog. As you may be aware, students with disabilities are disproportionately represented in STEM fields, and especially in work environment. Nationally, and it's even worse in El Paso del Norte area. In STEM fields, their representation are more skewed than any other fields. Even though they have unique abilities to pursue and contribute to the STEM fields. Through this event, we will hope to build STEM pathways for students with disabilities from El Paso del Norte area and nationally also. Factors such as ignorance and misconceptions are responsible for their underrepresentation. That prevents students with disabilities from pursuing these fields. I, Neelam Agarwal, am the Assistant Director of Center for Accommodations and Support Services, we call CASS, will be your host for this morning. And please let me know if you have any feedback. You can use our Facebook or Twitter hashtag Cassstem for real-time conversations. We would really appreciate that. Also, it would not have been possible without tremendous support from the planning committee members and CASS staff. Please join me in showing appreciation for their efforts. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite my boss and CASS director, Dr. Bill Detlef, to say a few things about CASS and also about this event. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Neelam. I'd like to welcome all of you this morning. This is actually the third day of our activities, what we call Ability Awareness Week. This is held in recognition of October as National Disability Employment Awareness Month. STEM obviously is a career goal for many of our students. Clearly they need to be in STEM majors first. We have over 1,000 students registered with our office right now, all with different types of disabilities, and of course all with different majors, every major that is represented on the UTEP campus. These students, many of them need assistive technology in order to handle their academic assignments, actually have an advantage going into many of the STEM fields where assistive technology would be a natural fit. We're also aware that many of them can actually make more money in the STEM fields than some of the other areas. So we are very fortunate that there is this partnership in place. Dr. Peter Golding from the College of Engineering, I know, is the primary investigator for the grant itself. Neelam is the project manager in our office, targeting with students with disabilities to encourage them to get into the STEM fields by STEM majors themselves. And then I know that there are several representatives from EPCC in ensuring that pipeline is there from K through 12 to the community college to higher ed. But again, I thank all of you for being here this morning, and this looks like it's going to be a very exciting agenda.
Now I would like to invite Dr. William Robertson to come on stage and say a few words.
Thanks, Neelam. Hi, everybody. My name is Bill Robertson. I'm the interim dean of the College of Education. I'm also a professor in STEM education in teacher education department. And I'm happy to be here today, and like you, I'm here today as a teacher, a scholar, a learner, a leader, and an advocate. On behalf of the College of Education, I want to extend my gratitude, our collective gratitude to you all for being here today for these important discussions and presentations about the work you're doing as part of Ability Awareness Week. The College of Education itself has 3 departments, a Center for Student Success, over 60 faculty, and an equal number of staff and student employees. We serve approximately 2,000 students in our undergraduate, master's, and doctoral programs, and this year is our 50th anniversary, so we're celebrating that throughout the year as well, showing a strong standing presence and commitment to our community. I would also like to thank the staff from the Center of Accommodation and Support Services for organizing the week of activities and for including me in a day devoted to STEM education. The very nature of the College of Education is interdisciplinary, with programs partnering with the College of Liberal Arts, Health Sciences, Science, Engineering, as well as in the community. It is our pleasure and my pleasure personally to be a part of this community here today and to be integrated here today as well, and to demonstrate our commitment to equity and educational opportunities for all. I hope you will also join me later for a special lunch presentation as Dr. Skateboard's Action STEM will be held outside the plaza at Centennial Plaza at noon to 12:30. Finally, we are here today to enjoy and to learn in the areas of STEM, or science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And this is very important for everyone here today. Yet I also want to share with you another STEM to think about as you interact with others and listen to the stories of the attendees and your colleagues. Let S stand for stick-to-itiveness. In other words, grit and perseverance. Let T represent tenacity. Let E represent energy. Let M represent motivation. STEM here today is much more than science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I want to thank you all for bringing me here today for another kind of STEM, stick-to-itiveness, tenacity, energy, and motivation. Thank you so much and have an awesome day.
Now I would like to invite Dean Teresa Maldonado to say a few words from College of Engineering point of view. Thank you.
It's so hard to follow Bill. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. And thank you, Bill and Neelam, for inviting me to even be here and make some remarks. This is an amazing event. I am always constantly looking for pathways for students from different backgrounds and figure out how to create even new ones to make access to engineering in particular possible. And I worked in DC recently, and we took a hard look at the veteran community, for example. And as we know, the veteran community, military personnel, represent a broad spectrum of the United States population, and unfortunately including persons with disabilities. And so we actually awarded many PIs across the country to explore how to engage military personnel as they separate from the military to look at engineering as a possible degree and career path. And so there are many examples across the country of successful programs to engage the military. With Fort Bliss as our neighbor and part of our community, we have an opportunity here at UTEP to engage the military personnel in what we do in engineering. We also live in a region that has a high occurrence of diabetes and obesity, and the complexity of disease like that unfortunately leads to blindness and hearing impairment. And so we have, I think, a quiet community that we need to engage in engineering, and forgive me for talking about engineering, but that's the way to go. Just saying. But we have a quiet community out there that I think is disproportionately quite large compared to other parts of the country, all along the Texas-Mexico border. And it's our responsibility and our enthusiasm to engage this community in engineering. We have a wonderful student body here. They embrace, what I see, they embrace everyone of all backgrounds, and so it's very exciting to work with these students. I want to highlight, in particular with persons with disabilities, an awareness, access, accommodation, and action. As far as awareness, the federal government has been talking about engaging persons with disabilities as early as the 1980s, and in fact has formalized this engagement in public law. And there are several legislative actions that occurred in the 80s and the 90s. But you can pass laws, but what do you do with them? And so we worked very hard, and I was fortunate to chair a committee called the Committee on Equal Opportunities in Science and Engineering that reports to Congress through the NSF president. And while I was chair of this committee, we had a two-day workshop on exploring how to engage persons with disabilities in science and engineering. It was really successful. But again, is how do we keep the activity going? So my point here is that there is formal legislation to support persons with disabilities in STEM. There are a lot of resources out there to tap, and it's our responsibility to do so to engage our local population into engineering. Access and accommodation. So I asked myself, I'm new here 3.5 months, but we have a responsibility to inform the K through 12 community and families in the region about the opportunities in engineering for their children and family members who may have an impairment of some type. Are we doing our part to inform military personnel who may have acquired an impairment about the opportunities of becoming an engineer? And then once these students are on campus, are these individuals able to access buildings, the library, classrooms, laboratories, and research facilities? For example, I used to always pose the question, can someone in a wheelchair have access to a clean room? And so how do we accommodate persons with disabilities in a clean room where you have to suit up in a clean environment to do nanoscience research? And then are we providing our students with information about the rich opportunities they have in the workforce? So this requires a partnership with future employers. So the College of Engineering and companies, federal agencies, and nonprofits to employ our students once they graduate. So action, what's next? We should look at our student recruitment strategies and make sure that they accommodate and invite all students to be part of the STEM community, and especially engineering. And I'm going to look at the way we do our recruiting for the College of Engineering to make sure that happens. Because of public law, we have research opportunities. National Science Foundation and other agencies actually have formal programs for faculty to do research in areas that deal with accommodation. And we are really primed to go after those monies. Persons with disabilities, we need you in STEM. You offer a unique perspective that could propel the United States to look at what we develop in research and commercialization. And you have an eye on how we can do things better that no one else has. And so I look forward to this engagement in the College of Engineering as I serve as Dean. Thank you. Now I'm very excited to introduce our new provost, Carol Parker, who came to us from the University of New Mexico. She's just doing fabulously here, and since we're both new, I think a week apart, we're figuring this out. So she also offers a different perspective on the topic of today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate the privilege to address you this morning and to meet our esteemed guests and to see so many of our wonderful faculty and students here this morning. I was thinking about this event this morning, and I have just a few minutes, so I wanted to take those to frame your work in the context of UTEP's mission, because it aligns so wonderfully. And the work of this project and the program today, what it represents, is representative of what UTEP aspires to do in every aspect of our work. Our motto is access and excellence. And more than any other university I know, I think UTEP delivers on those aspirations. And when I walked into the building today, I noticed all of those banners all over the union talking about talented students, enriching experience, and lifelong success. And of course, that's our new motto around what we call the edge, the advantage that one gains by coming to UTEP. We aspire to embrace the talents of everyone who comes here to study and to work here, whether you are a student or a staff person or a faculty member. We want to work with everyone as an individual, meet them where they are, help identify everyone's abilities and then nurture and grow those abilities in line with their aspirational goals. And I'm very excited about this positioning of our work in this way. I want to encourage all of us to continually remind ourselves of the importance of looking at everyone's assets. This is a very positive, powerful way to view opportunity. No one thrives if we approach everything from a deficit viewpoint. It's not about what we lack, it's not about our barriers. If we can truly identify our assets and the power that we have as individuals and how we can all contribute that to the mission of educating our students, creating knowledge and disseminating knowledge, we will all thrive. And I think the work of Cass and the work of this particular program align wonderfully with that vision. And so I just wanted to kind of set the table this morning, if you will, in that context as you begin your work this morning and explore the programs that we will continue to build to ensure the goals of the pathways for students with disabilities. So thank you very much for taking on this vitally important work. And I wish you a wonderful conference today, and I look forward to learning about the outcomes.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Parker. Now I would like to invite Dr. Heidi Taboda, the Associate Dean for Research in College of Engineering, to come and introduce our keynote speaker. Thank you.
Hi, good morning everyone. My name is Heidi Taboada. I am the Associate Dean for Research and Graduate Studies at the College of Engineering, and it is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Janine Cook as our main speaker of this event. Dr. Cook is currently a principal member of the technical staff at Sandia National Laboratories. She successfully completed her education in STEM from a wheelchair after incurring a spinal cord injury during her third semester of college. Through a positive attitude, a strong faith, and perseverance, she has managed to overcome the many obstacles that keep many persons with disabilities away from higher education and subsequently the workforce. Dr. Cook works on several projects aimed at paving the way to exascale computing. Her research areas are microarchitecture simulation techniques, performance modeling and analysis, workload characterization, and microarchitectural power optimization. She has presented her work on Monte Carlo simulation in many IEEE conferences. Prior to joining Sandia, she was an associate professor in the Klimsch School of Electrical and Computer Engineering at New Mexico State University. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Cook.
Thank you very much. Just thank you very much for inviting me here today. I really appreciate it, and I'm very honored to be here, particularly with students. My love has been students for a large part of my career, and it's just invigorating to be around you guys. So let me just give you a little disclaimer about my talk. So I am a very honest person, brutally honest, and so hopefully I won't say anything to offend anybody. These are my opinions and sort of my views from 34 years in a wheelchair. Yeah, it's been a long road, but hopefully this will also encourage some of you to keep on keeping on and get your education. Like Dr. Robertson said, actually, I really liked his STEM acronym because I think perseverance is the biggest key to success, particularly when you have a disability. So, my talk is called Navigating a Career in STEM from a Wheelchair. It's experiences from the field. And these pictures here are just some of the things that I've been working on at Sandia for the 4 years that I've been there. I work on some advanced processing and memory architectures, and I also, in the middle there is a picture of some dashboards of workload characterization stuff. I work on a monitoring system called Lightweight Distributed Monitoring System up at Sandia. And then on the far right there is, I work on exascale systems a lot, and so that's a kind of vendor agnostic, non-proprietary agnostic image of what exascale systems are starting to look like and what we think they're going to look like in the 2020 timeframe. Okay? How do I forward my slide? Okay, great. Oh, there you are. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to share a little bit about myself. I want you guys to understand me personally. So this is my story. Once upon a time, there was a girl named Janine. My parents are both first-generation U.S.-born citizens, so their parents came from Spain, Italy, and Mexico. Something that's extraordinarily humbling to me is that on both of my grandfather's birth certificates, they died with the occupation of a janitor, and my dad really broke that mold, and he went to school and got his PhD in physics, which is a big reason why I was interested in STEM. So this is my husband here on your left, my father standing up. I've been married for 22 years. It's been an awesome 22 years. On the right is my whole family, so that's my mom and my dad and my two sisters. And oddly enough, both of my sisters have degrees in electrical engineering. Very strange. So I was in a car accident in 1983. I fell asleep while I was driving at the age of 19. You can do the math. I'm not a spring chicken. I fell asleep while I was driving. I didn't involve anybody else. So that was a real blessing. And I have to say my accident has been nothing but a blessing and a big learning experience. Next slide. So I always have to share the second love of my life, which is my horse. I don't let disability keep me from the things that I love to do. I think when you have a disability, you need to focus on the things that you can do, not the things that you can't do. Because if you focus on the things that you can't do, you're probably going to be a sad, miserable person. Okay, it's a choice to do that. It's a choice to be happy and positive. But, I think making that choice is it's really a great decision because it can lead to a really fulfilling, very full, normal life. I live a pretty normal life for somebody who's obviously not quite normal in a lot of ways. But this is my horse, Ringo Starr. Me and my husband enjoy riding together. Yes, he's a beetle. He's awesome. He's a Tennessee Walker. I ordered him online. You can acquire a horse and not see him until he jumps off a trailer in your driveway. I've seen more of New Mexico on the back of a horse, I think, than I have in a car. Next slide. So, education-wise, just to let you guys know sort of where I've been and kind of the experiences that I've had, I'm a home girl. I like to stay close to my family. So I didn't want to leave for school. I stayed at home. I grew up in Colorado Springs. I got my BS in electrical engineering at the University of Colorado in Colorado Springs. I really left home and went up the road maybe 100 miles to Boulder and struck out on my own and got my MS in computer science at Boulder. I actually intended to stay for a PhD, but the campus was extraordinarily inaccessible, and I just couldn't stay there because it was really prohibitive. I got my PhD, so that's when I decided I had to leave, and I did look around to many, many institutions, and the sad truth is even today I don't think somebody like me can pick where they go to school, because a lot of institutions are not accessible. And the sad thing about the ADA is there's no real enforcement. The enforcement is through civil suit, and so if you like to go around suing people, that's great, but I just wanted to get a PhD. And so I left Colorado. They basically said, sue us. I said, I don't want to sue you, I just want to get a PhD. And I looked around at the East Coast, and the East Coast is really inaccessible. The infrastructure is old, and it's downtown, and it's not good for somebody with a mobility disability like mine. So to be honest, the Southwest is the absolute best place for people in wheelchairs. So anybody with a mobility disability, similar to mine, spinal cord injury isn't the only thing, but it's pretty prevalent. But this is the best place to be because things are flat and there's a lot of room to build and they're newer. And so I actually wound up at New Mexico State because I was in natural language processing and they had a really awesome center at NMSU. And then when I visited, the campus was accessible, so my decision was made. Okay, next slide. So my career. So I graduated with my undergrad and went to work for several years as an electrical engineer, and I went into the mechanical engineering department after a while because I got really bored with the electrical engineering widgets that I was making. I worked for McDonnell Douglas Aerospace, which no longer exists. It was bought by Boeing many, many years ago. Then I went to school and was in school for quite some time. I actually quit school for a while. I actually was a student here for a while. I don't know if you guys knew that, but I was a student down here for a couple of years, and to be honest, I was living in Las Cruces and I'm not much of a commuter. So I got tired of that and sat out for a little while, but wound up going back to NMSU and finishing my degree. 2002, they hired me. I was not their first choice, but luckily the first choice person already took another offer, so I got a job. And I was in the Clip School of Electrical and Computer Engineering for many years. I was an associate professor, and it was really the point I needed to either go to full or do something else, and I kind of was feeling the rumblings of doing something else, so I decided to leave, and I landed at Sandia National Laboratories and in the Scalable Architectures group. I'm in the group that really aims to specify and sort of drive the computing industry toward systems that help our applications, the kinds of applications that Sandia looks at. And a lot of people don't really understand what Sandia does, and I'm pretty blunt about it. I think some people aren't as blunt, maybe on purpose, but this is not classified information by any means. But we steward the nuclear stockpile. Okay, so what does that really mean? We don't sit around and watch the nukes all the time and make sure they're all okay. We used to be able to test them underground. Many, many years ago in a land far, far away in Nevada, we had an underground test facility. And that's where all of the nuclear weapons were tested for degradation and for quality and to see if they were still working. We can't do that anymore. So they started simulating, function and degradation and a lot of other things many years ago, simulating those on computers. And so that has continued throughout these last 25 years or so, and that's why we need really big systems, because these simulations are really complicated and run for a long time. So the national labs are one of the big acquirers of high-performance computing systems. Okay. All right, so the highlight of my career was the 2008 PCASE Award. So the PCASE is Presidential Early Career Award for Scientists and Engineers. It's awarded by the President of the United States, and I got it under President George Bush. And the only reason why I really, I'm not one of those people who toots my own horn, but this was an awesome thing to receive. Not very many people get it. I was really shocked when I got it. But notice how I stick out a little bit like a sore thumb. I really bet I'm the only person in a wheelchair who's ever received that award, but I never really went and looked. The White House is not accessible. What a surprise. And so I did something sort of brave. I decided not to tell them I was in a wheelchair because I figured, shame on you. You passed the law. It's 2008. You should, it's high time you need to be accessible. Well, they weren't. They scrambled. They didn't know what to do. They had no way to transport me. I couldn't get in the front door. So it was, but it just shows you sort of, really what the laws have done. And, they've done some, but from my perspective, not a whole lot. So eventually I did make it into the White House, and the awesome thing is I had to go the back way. So I got to go through the West Wing, and I got to go through right by the Oval Office, and I got to see lots of artwork, which was really awesome because George Bush is a Western fan. So I saw all kinds of some of my favorite Western artists on the wall. Yeah, they have really nice artwork in the White House, so it was kind of a treat. All right, next slide. Okay, so let's get to sort of the beef of what I want to tell you. I'm not here to give a boring technical talk. I'm here to sort of tell you about, what to expect or what you do when you have a disability and, you're in STEM or in any other field, really. So the good news is you can get an education and have a successful career with a disability, okay? You can. Education, it was tough because I have physical accessibility issues that just are hard to meet and they're costly to meet, and I think that's why they aren't met. But every place I've ever worked was really very accommodating. So that is the very good news. So I say, yay, good news, right? Okay, so next slide. So the bad news is there are a lot of obstacles. No matter what disability you have, I think there are obstacles, both physical and social. So, I always say you got to grow your shell now because it's tough, okay? There's days when you think you should just sit home on the couch and eat bonbons. And there's days when you just feel like you're treated like a third-class citizen, and there's days when you just feel like society wants you to stay home, okay? And you just gotta decide what you want to do, and I think that perseverance and internal drive is really, really, really important. And you've got to learn where that's at, and you've got to learn to tap into that. So physical obstacles, there's a lot. The Americans with Disability Act hasn't fixed everything, and I know a lot of people think it has, but it really hasn't. Universities are still in general pretty inaccessible. Now I know the universities in the Southwest, and I found UTEP particularly accessible, as well as NMSU, but go in the Midwest or on either coast and anywhere in between, and it's old infrastructure, and it's just not really built for people with disabilities. There's no bathrooms. There's, I hate when I'm in a classroom and I have to sit in the back. I have one choice. I can either sit in the back or sit in the front. I don't really get the same kind of desk that a regular student does. It makes you feel even more of an oddball than you already are. And so, there just aren't universities who really do this well. Curb cuts, bathrooms, parking, I can't get a handicap parking space to save my life typically, but housing, on-campus housing, disabled housing is almost non-existent. And it still is today. I hate to say this, but, I would contend that this situation still exists today in most universities. So, that just means that if you're choosing a university to go to, you have to be really careful, and you have to visit and learn how to ask the right questions, because that's going to be really important. You sort of have to advocate for yourself even when you're tired of advocating for yourself. You really need to learn how to ask the right questions so that you can get what you need where you go. So traveling with a disability is a complete nightmare. So this is another physical obstacle that I face in my job quite a bit. So we travel a lot. Sandians, I don't know, they love it, I think, but I'm on a plane a lot, enough that my wheelchair is practically rattled apart. I'm constantly losing bolts and picking them up and going, where is this from? My husband just grabs them and says, I don't know, but I don't think you're going to fall apart. I'll put it back in later. Okay, great. Some of you guys probably wonder how I even travel. I do travel by myself. I don't travel with a companion. I have to be able to lug my suitcase around. I have an S-hook that I connect to the luggage thing that comes out of my suitcase, and I connect the hook right here and connect it to my suitcase in like a giant train, and I roll through the airport and get a lot of stairs. The way I get on an airplane is on a little thing called an aisle chair. They board me first and they take me off last. It's a really skinny chair that goes through the aisle. I have to prearrange that, and that's, even if I call 10,000 times, it still can turn into a fiasco at either side, because I think they don't communicate. And even though you put it in your profile and you mark it on your ticket, you get there and they act surprised, which never ceases to amaze me. I've given up being upset about it because it's not worth it anymore. Choose joy, that's one of my mottos. So there's very few wheelchair accessible rooms in hotels, very, very few, and they don't save those or set those aside for people who need them in any way whatsoever. Actually, they assign those rooms just like any other room. So I can call up, I can call 10 places and not find a single accessible room, but I know darn well they're not filled by people who really need them. In my years of travel, I never see anybody like me. I think one time I have. It's really kind of sad. You're really not seeing people with physical disabilities like you did 15 years ago. They're really starting to disappear, I think, and the statistics show that they are really disappearing. Hand control rental cars. So I drive with a hand control. I can rent a car with a hand control. This also turns into a fiasco though, because I can't force them to make sure that it's there for me. All I can do is call as many times as I can and emphasize as many times as I can that's how I'm going to get around. I can't drive a regular car. I was just in Oakland, and of course I arrived and I was all happy because I got off the plane early. It was 5 o'clock. I got to the rental car. Thought, great, I'm going to be in Livermore pretty early. I can get dinner, get settled, and get a good night's sleep. Lo and behold, no hand control car. Okay, the dance begins. I always say the dance begins. And so, I had to wait for an hour while they installed a hand control. Thank goodness it was 5 o'clock. If it was any later, I would have just been out of luck. And it's amazing that, they don't really try to help me. They just say, I'm sorry, Mrs. Cook, and leave me. Yeah. And so, it's pretty amazing. Even on hotel rooms, if I have a reservation, that doesn't mean I'm really going to get that room. And I can't tell you how many times I've arrived really late, and all I get is, I'm sorry, Mrs. Cook. It's like, okay, what am I supposed to do now? Yeah, so I call my husband crying, and he tries to help me find another hotel room, and I usually have to stay way far away from wherever it is that I'm going, which complicates things even further. But it's a complicated life. I'm not trying to just say, woe is me. This is reality. And so, if you have a physical disability, prepare yourself. Prepare yourself for the worst, because when it's not so bad, you'll be happy. Public transportation, really accessible transportation doesn't exist in most cities. It's just not there. They have 2 buses in the entire, city of 1 million people that are accessible, and they're never at the place that you need them to be when you need them to be. And there's no such thing as a wheelchair accessible hotel shuttle. You know, most people just say, well, take the hotel shuttle. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's a great suggestion because I can't get in a hotel shuttle. None of them are accessible. And you know, cabs aren't accessible and cab drivers get really cranky over my wheelchair. So honestly, the easiest thing for me to do is rent a car. Now you can see how this could degrade your mental state, right, from facing all these obstacles. But again, perseverance, motivation, drive, keep your eye on where you're going and what it is that you want to do in your life, and just try not to let these other things bother you. I always say when I have a bad mental day, I just do something that makes me happy and forget about it. Ride my horse, eat chocolate, drink a fine wine, you know, whatever it is. Learn these strategies for coping because, you know, it's hard. Next slide. So I just had to show this picture because I just took this a month or two ago, and you probably can't see it all that well, but this is a radio tent set up in handicap parking. I was at a grocery store, so you know I can't park at a grocery store to save my life. So this is the last grocery store that I've tried in Las Cruces that I can actually still get a parking space at. But in the background here, this trailer is the Las Cruces police. They were hosting an event and had the radio people set their tent up in handicap parking. So yeah, this is what we're up against here. And you know, my husband, who gets really angry about these things, came down, so I texted the picture to him. He's like, what is this? And I said, well, it's par for the course. And he came down and he talked to them, and the police claimed that they can't ticket in a private lot, which is just not the truth. You can look up the statute, it's usually on the placards, so I don't know the law. And, you know, I mean, this isn't anybody with a handicap placard. I don't know. They just don't care about the law. And so, you know, if the police don't even care, I don't know. Handicap parking is the end of my independent life because I can't park anywhere. I can't park at the airport anymore. I have to be driven. So yeah, just if you know somebody who's abusing this, please tell them that they really shouldn't do. And if you have a space and can walk, just take the closest space and leave these for people that really need them. Okay, social obstacles. These are probably the hardest things. So the perception with people with disabilities, I can't hide mine. I can't hide my disability. I'm truly physically disabled. I'm on the sign, for Pete's sake, right? You know, the perception is really, really negative. People always think I'm lost, no matter where I'm at, whether I'm at a conference, or they always think I'm lost. Always, okay? They think I'm confused. They think I need help. You know, and sometimes I do need help, but I'm very blatant about asking for it, and it's pretty clear when I do need help. People treat me very differently than an able-bodied person would be treated, particularly when I'm traveling. They never could dream that I'd be traveling for business, so I always get, so where are you going to visit? Well, I'm visiting Livermore National Lab for a meeting for a week. You know, and I just don't get treated the same. I get treated very differently. They often leave me on the plane. I'm the last one off the plane, but it's not uncommon for the lights to be shut down, and they're not supposed to, but everybody has deplaned except for me while they're waiting for the person who operates the little chair to come and get me. I think they just don't think I have anything better to do than to wait. And you know, that's not the case. I have much fewer hours in my day than most people have just because of the difficulty of being in a wheelchair, and especially in the morning, it's really hard. I mean, just think about how I get dressed without being able to stand. Just let your mind grind on that for a couple minutes. It's not easy. So they don't ever think I'm like traveling for business, and God forbid a person with a disability would have a job, right? Let alone a PhD in electrical engineering. So it gets pretty hard sometimes to take this, but you know, I just try to focus on the goal. If I do be brave enough to take public transportation, I wait for hours while my colleagues are at dinner or getting to bed, and I'm there waiting for the one accessible bus in the city to come back and get me. So it's tough. The public generally believes ADA fixed everything, but the ADA, the problem is it's just not enforced, and so it's a big problem. The other problem is the definition of disability has changed, and this is really why I don't think you're seeing physically disabled people out in the workforce anymore, or out in public, because the other disabilities that aren't as severe maybe have really become the mainstream. So they're not expecting somebody like me at a hotel. They're not expecting somebody like me at an airport. 15 years ago it was different. Just watch who parks in handicap parking. That's the face of disability. People who have injuries, or who suffer from some disease, or they're not people who are really what I call disabled. And I hate to get into the invisible disability thing, but I really do think if you don't need accommodation, I just don't know how you have a disability. Because a disability really is that, some major life activities you can't do, such as walking or dressing yourself, or, these things. And so I think the definition of disability has become just way too broad. And so I think it's pushed the people who are really disabled out of the picture. And, to be honest, hotels are starting to remodel, and they're remodeling to be less accessible than they were before. So it's more broadly accessible to people who are less disabled than me. I hate to say that, but and to sort of serve a different population. So unless things change, I think people like me are really going to disappear in the population. They're going to stay at home. Okay, next slide. So advice. This is my takeaway in my last slide. Know your self-worth. If you don't have a positive perception of yourself and what you can contribute, it's going to be a tough go. So really know your self-worth, because you do have a lot to contribute. As other people said before me this morning, we really need persons with disabilities in higher education institutions, and we need them in the workforce. You have a unique perspective, and you can contribute to making this place a better world, okay? So just know that. Find advocates. You have to self-advocate, but you get tired of self-advocating, so find people who can advocate for you. Okay, register with your Students with Disabilities office, because they can advocate for you. Okay, be honest with yourself and with your employer and the Office of Students with Disabilities about your needs and your limitations. Sometimes it's hard, right? It's hard to really spill your guts and tell them really what you need, but if you don't tell them, they don't know, okay? So just make sure that you know what you need and you voice that. Find support. There are support groups, and I was one who thought these support groups were just full of a bunch of whiny people who wanted to whine, right? I just want to know how to cope and get the job done and keep going so that I can have a good life and reach my goal. But seek out those groups, because you have camaraderie and you have support, and you can get advice from people who have gone through the same or similar thing. Or, it's amazing what some people know and just what different perspective they can give to you to help solve a problem that you're facing. And educate people, okay? So I really don't think that, these perceptions and these physical obstacles, I don't think they're malicious for the most part, okay? I just think people are naive. They just don't know. And so if we're not out there, we're not going to be seen, and people aren't going to know, okay? So really, try to educate the people you're around on who you are and what your needs are and how you contribute to society. Don't be shy to say, look, I got my PhD in astrophysics and I work for Los Alamos. Don't be shy in saying that, because I think the more that people know how able people with disabilities are, the more the perceptions are going to change. Okay, so please be out there. It'll help me a lot too, because it's pretty lonely out there right now. Okay, next slide. I think that's all I have to say. So if you guys have questions, you're more than welcome to ask if that's fine.
Any questions from the audience? Thank you, Dr. Cook.
Sure.
Any questions? Comments?
No.
You don't need it?
No.
Oh.
Feel free to ask me at a break if you have some questions.
No?
They're very quiet. We're early then. I left 10 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Cook,
Sure.
for your wonderful and inspiring presentation. As you mentioned, we are very fortunate that UTEP is wheelchair accessible. And I am pretty aware that the CAS office works pretty hard to ensure that students with disabilities are offered the same opportunities that any other students get. And we as a UTEP community, we also work pretty hard to ensure that the success of all of the students is obtained. Not only students, staff and faculty as well. But obviously there is always much more to do and improve. We really appreciate the time you have taken to be here with us today, share your experiences, a little bit of your personal life, the research you do, and the hobbies you enjoy. Please accept this small present as a token of our appreciation. Thank you for being at UTEP and being a good UTEP friend.
Well, thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I just wanted to ask a question and having this opportunity. So you mentioned one of the things that really caught me personally was you talked about choosing the joy of the day, which I think is, and that's something I say to myself, because we all feel pressure. But I think the other thing I was really interested in was your motivation in your field. So how did you come, with a dad who was a physicist and two sisters who are electrical engineers, it's obviously in the genes, I would think. But you mentioned your grandparents both died with the occupation of janitor. So I just wanted to, if you could share a little bit about your own personal motivation that led you in your field, because I think that would be very important for the aspirations of the students here today.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So the question was, what sort of led me to the aspiration in my field. So I did have some really good home influence from my dad. So my dad always pushed us towards math and science. Because, even if you go into math and science and don't wind up going into a physical science area, it never does you any harm. So I think what really motivated me was I was always interested in planes. Okay, I know it's a really strange thing, but when I was 10 years old, I wanted to have my birthday party at the airport, and my mom wouldn't let me. Because I was always so fascinated that these big things could actually get off the ground. I'd just sit there and watch them take off and watch them land, and I just was always sort of interested in aerospace, which is why I sort of went to McDonnell Douglas when I graduated, because I got to work on rockets, right? Really big planes going one direction, one time. But that's really what sort of brought me into it, is because I was interested in aerospace, And my dad was really good about sharing what he did with us. So he wasn't just a nuclear physicist, and he didn't just come home and not talk to us about what he did at work. And so we'd ask him, well, what did you do at work? And he'd tell us, well, today we tested a tank. Actually this was back in the days when they tested tanks in the field, right? We tested a tank to see if it maneuvered the way we thought it would and had the weapons on it. And, he'd show us pictures, and it wasn't classified, obviously it was out in the field, but, sharing that with all of us girls, I think was really important. So, and a long time ago, a funny story is he'd take us to work with us on Saturdays sometimes, I think, because my mom needed us to leave. And so it was really fun because my dad worked at Community Sciences, and the thing that I remember is you could write on the walls, right? They had like those overlays where you took the black pen and you could write on the walls. And the other thing is my dad would let us call up his friend somewhere. I don't know, we dialed up over the computer on a modem, on one of those old modems that you young people probably don't even know existed, but those big clunker things that you actually dialed and then plugged into the receptacle and it made all the noise. And then miraculously, some poor sap at the other end would talk to us girls, while my dad was getting work done. We'd talk back and forth to one of his friends over the computer. So I always, my dad did a really good job of sharing that with us. So if there's any parents out there, I know you come home tired and your kids are kind of annoying sometimes, but share that with your kids, because I think it does really make a difference. And so I'm forever grateful that my dad shared that with us and my mom allowed him time to share that with us, because I think that's where all three of our loves for science and engineering came from.
Janine? So I think just maybe you can comment something. So there is your disability is visible, we can notice it. But there are so many hidden disability and the traumatic kind of experience. Sometimes veteran, for example, they were out. They had to go through the experience and they can't pick up their classes. Any comments, anything you'd like to share on that?
Yeah, so the question is about people with hidden disabilities. And the people, so I stick out like a sore thumb, and the people with hidden disabilities aren't really identified, right? And so I think in those cases, sometimes it's harder to advocate for yourself. Because, they see me coming and they know me. So to be honest, at my undergrad institution, there was really not much accessibility, but they knew I had an accident. It was a small school, and when I came back, they had modified bathrooms, they had put door openers on that weren't there before. Okay, so I didn't even have to advocate for myself. But if you're a person who has a traumatic brain injury, something that's not necessarily seen, my advice to you would be to share that with people. Okay, as hard as it is, you need to share that with people. You need to share that with your colleagues, and you need to share that with your professors in the classroom. Because you might have a really bad day where you have an excruciating headache. People don't understand headaches, okay, but they can be excruciating and debilitating, and if you have a head injury, sometimes that comes with the territory. Sometimes other things come with the territory, but they don't see those. And you need to make your professors or your employers aware of those. And so I would just suggest practicing, telling them. I know it's hard. It's not easy, sort of putting your weaknesses out there. But, your weaknesses can be your strength, too. And so, practice on your colleagues what you're going to say to people. And educate people. We all need to know. Okay, we all need to know what you're going through so that we can have empathy and we can help and support you. I don't think anybody's malicious. I just think people don't know. Did that answer your question?
Hi, Dr. Cook. I was wondering if you could share your recollections of being a UTEP student.
Yeah. Okay, so the question, the request was to share my recollections of being a UTEP student. So, the one thing I have to say about UTEP is I've always been really impressed by this organization. I'm totally impressed by Cassstem and NELM. I do a lot of these things, and I'm not sure I've ever seen such a well-organized event, to be honest. They're usually smaller, they're not as well-organized, and I do a lot, right? Sometimes I think I must be the only STEM person with a disability because I get invited to do a lot of these, but my recollection of UTEP was, so I was here a long time ago, and the campus has changed significantly. I'm amazed at how much you guys have built, but my years at UTEP were fond years. I made a lot of good friends, and it was accessible back then, so I had no problem getting around the campus. I had no problem parking. I had, I don't know if computer science is still it was in like an old building.
We have a new building.
Oh yeah, you're not, because I've been in a new building. That's beautiful. But we were kind of in an old building tucked away in I don't know what part of the campus.
Yeah, Prospect Hall.
Yeah, okay, long time ago. But it was accessible. I felt like the classrooms were really pretty accessible because they were small and flat. And, you know, I had a really good experience at UTEP. The only reason why I left is because I was just tired of commuting. I'm not a good, well, mornings are so hard for me. So it's really hard to add an hour on top of that and then add an hour on top of that at night. And so, you know, that's why I didn't stay. But to be honest, the department head of computer science at New Mexico State was my lab mate here at UTEP. Yeah, Santron. And so, yeah, we laugh, you know. We're both getting old and gray, and we remember each other when we were young, spry doctoral students here at UTEP. But it was good days. It was a really good time. I met had very close colleague relationships. And, but I never, you know, the faculty were great. It's a great department. I still think it is a really good department. I think you guys have a lot of good things going on down here at UTEP, which never ceases to amaze me how different things operate in New Mexico, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
As an engineer, did you ever feel motivated to design something that would help people with disabilities?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the question was, as an engineer, did I ever feel motivated to design something for people with disabilities? And the answer is yes. So in my PhD, when I started my PhD, I was in artificial intelligence. I was in natural language processing. And so at University of Colorado, what I worked on was a predictive language system. It's so funny now because it's on your smartphone now, right? I worked on a predictive language system, a statistical predictive language system for Stephen Hawking. And the reason was because they came to us, now I'm having a senior moment. What's the name of the aerospace outfit that he works for? Okay, I can't remember. But they came to us and said, look, is there anything we can do to help speed his language because the scientists get a little frustrated because he can't talk very fast. And so I built this huge statistical model, and it did predictive, you know, based on a scientific corpus. So the corpus was restricted, and predicted language. And so I wanted to continue my PhD in that, and so I actually wanted to go to the University of Delaware because they had something called the AI DuPont Institute, which I believe still exists, and its sole purpose is to develop assistive technology for people with disabilities. I actually accepted a position from them, and I got an NSF fellowship to do my PhD there. But while I was there were accessibility issues that they promised they could fix. But by the time I got home, there was a message in my box that said, we're really sorry, but we don't have the budget to fix any of this. And so I cried my heart out because I had already sent out all the no, I'm not coming to all the other institutions. And so I was crying and I said, I don't know where I'm going to do my PhD. So my husband actually got on the phone and called the department head at NMSU and said, can she still come? And he said, sure, she can still come. We'll give her support. She can come. So, you know, that's part of my story. But yes, my first love was actually assistive technology.
Anybody else? No?
It's a great question.
Thank you.
Once again, I would like to thank Dr. Cook for her wonderful insights that are really inspirational for our students and for this population and for UTEP. Thank you so much once again. I think we would like to take a 10 minutes break before we continue for our next speaker. In the meantime, if you have some time, you want to interact with Dr. Cook, I think she will be here for a little while or later too. Feel free to do so. And we will start with our next talk in around 10 more minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, so awesome. So where did you come from?
The story of my
I
life.
don't remember.
Very short. I studied in Mexico. My
you
PhD
did?
was in Rutgers
Okay.
University.
Okay.
So.
It was a very nice meeting you.
It was really nice meeting you.
Absolutely. If you're sticking around today, or are you heading back?
So I'm probably going to stick around till noon. I know I should come down and visit you guys more.
Yeah. Well, if you find yourself at the Centennial Plaza, you'll get to see me do another way of doing informal education instead.
Okay, that's at noon?
Yes.
Okay,
Well,
all right.
thanks so much
It
for
was
coming.
great to meet you.
Absolutely, a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks. Hello.
Hi.
Who are you?
Regina.
Hello, Regina. Nice to meet you.
Likewise. I forgot, I wanted to ask you if you also had to overcome being a woman in engineering.
Yeah, so people often ask me, so I'm Hispanic, a woman in a wheelchair, right?
Right.
And so people often ask me, what is the most obstructive? And I say, if I can get in the door, being a woman is yeah, it's hard.
Okay.
I have to tell you, it hasn't changed a lot.
Right. No,
So
I
that's where you have to garner support too, because
Yeah.
all women have the same experiences across the board. Whether you're a young woman, whether you're a really well-known senior woman, whether you're in between, we all have the exact same experiences. So that's where you've got to find other women.
Yeah, right now, I'm a senior mechanical engineer.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Yeah, mechanical engineering stuff, there's not very many women.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And my friend, we are starting an organization for automotive, and it's all women. We have
that's awesome.
about 30 girls right now,
That's
and
so awesome.
we're gonna be building a Formula One car for a competition. I think they have it at an MSU actually.
That's so cool, really.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Well, that's what you need to do. You
Yeah.
need to advocate for yourself. Find your own support. Because, out in the industry, it's going to be the same way, if not worse.
Yeah.
What's
your major?
Mechanical.
Mechanical.
Yeah.
Juniors?
Senior.
Senior.
Yeah. Get ready to be done.
Because one of my friends, she went to GM, I think, and she saw the girls, the women there, they were doing the measurements, and she got so upset that.
Yeah, you've got to advocate, and you've got to learn how to do it well and tactfully. That's why I
Yeah.
suggest practicing. Right? Decide what you're going to say. And
Okay.
practice. That's awesome. Oh, you'll have one. But find a company even after you graduate.
Yes, we're gonna
Find
contact
one.
one.
Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you.
Oh, he's joining remotely. That's awesome.
I can hear you and I can see you.
Hi, it's my cousin.
Right now I can only see the top of your head, but
It was in, it should have been in Albuquerque.
Perhaps. I told her that it was with
Yeah.
Jimmy McVeigh, but
Yeah,
I don't know if
that's
it was
long
Albuquerque
time
or...
You were reviewing our NSF abstracts with the intellectual
That's
engineering
right,
program.
yeah.
is there any chance, is there any chance you can turn that laptop around and point the camera at the audience?
okay.
We were not expecting
Okay,
to
good.
see him there. We was like, Dr. Bronson, what is he doing here? we don't talk in the hallway, but
We talk when you're at a workshop somewhere.
That'll especially help bring
Also in the
questions.
College of Engineering,
Okay.
Industrial Manufacturing and Systems Engineering. I am now the new graduate program director, and I work on reliability, resiliency, system resiliency,
some really good stuff.
systems engineering.
Do you really? I know, see, we need
Yeah, I can see you. Good job, man.
We do. We as a lab.
Great.
Yes.
I took it down
I
to
have
there.
relationships now with the dean, our dean.
Right.
Yeah, we really need to get it. It'd be nice to have a pipeline. We have an exchange, a faculty exchange,
We just sent
things like that.
a proposal for the Department of Homeland Security to
Yeah, I can share my screen right now if you want.
defense and supply chain defense.
Huh,
Like
okay.
mostly focused on chemical and biological attacks on the food supply chain.
Yeah, okay.
And we were looking for
Interesting.
partners
That's interesting.
from national labs.
Yeah, okay.
And Sandia came.
Are you seeing my presentation?
I don't know the names that were given, like the
We were able to get some names. I don't recall the
Do
name.
you remember them?
Perhaps it was a couple of names or something. We received the letters.
We received the letters.
I don't really recall.
But
But they are mostly in systems engineering.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but we wanted someone with a background in logistics.
Oh, yeah, I can see fine. That's great. Thank you.
You gotta hunt for those people. So the problem is, see, I wish they would give me half appointments, right?
Alright,
Because
so about
that would
14
make it
minutes,
easier
right?
to spend time helping
Okay.
somebody.
no friends. Let me introduce you.
Yeah. We last served President McVeigh together. I'm really good. Yeah, those students. Oh no! Let me just introduce myself quick to these students. I know they're waiting, and I'm sorry to interrupt. And then I'll get with you guys. You're going to be here, right?
Yes.
Yes, for
How are you doing? For how long?
how long am I gonna be here?
Yeah.
You heard something else? You can be honest.
No, yeah, I am really honest. So I'm going to see you.
I just want to say hello.
Hello.
Very nice talking.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
I'm about to get my PhD in chemistry. And I'm
Are
about
you
to start.
really? That's really awesome.
This-
So then what are you going to do?
I'm going to graduate in the spring. Hunting for jobs right now. I think it's the hardest thing. Even harder than PhD.
You'll see. Okay, you're just
I'm going to get my
Yeah, okay.
still.
So what kind of chemistry?
It's mostly bioorganics.
You know, why don't you send me an email? Send me your information. I'll see if I can find the people up there. Sometimes it's hard for me to find them. But let me see if I can try to find some.
Do you know if there's opportunities for
Well, I think in other groups are. So in our group, apparently we're at a limit. And so I remember, but then they said that there's also a finding competition, so I think there are. See, Mexico's not as easy as Because if you have nuclear weapons,
an MSU, but I will.
Oh, do you really?
They just informed me that I have to.
I know we should have coffee.
Yes, yes.
That would be awesome.
I'm sorry, I need to go.
No, don't be sorry. Okay, look,
Yeah, but
let's stay in touch.
either
I want to hear
if
your
you are
story.
not a good commuter, I will travel.
Well, or when
Yes, yes. I will love to visit the city and take some of
You
my faculty. Now I am in that role, so I need to bring faculty to the national labs and that is very I will send you an email and then we will talk. We can go to the Pinto restaurant, Pinto Vino. I love
awesome.
Nice meeting you. Thank you for hearing.
So I will definitely
Get contact.
appreciate your help and advice.
Yeah, because I know it's hard. You know, you should actually also look at the community. CMDIT. Go look at that, because it also has workshops for senior students and for the technical and for young PhDs. And actually they provide all the workshops. Look at theirs, because there might be some ways. CMDIT. It's called the Center for Minorities. The Center for Minorities and Persons with Disabilities in IT. It's called CMDIT. I should have given a plug. Shameless plug. They run the tablet. And so, try to look at it. And send me an email. Just make sure if you don't hear from me, send me an email. Okay, because sometimes I get so much put little letters. UTEP student. Let me see if I can find it. I can't guarantee it.
I thank you very much for inspiring.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Alejandro Costa.
Hello, Alejandro. Nice to meet you.
I am studying mechanical engineering, and also I'm starting med school.
Oh, can I after my own? Okay, that's awesome.
I want to ask you for laboratories that are researching on prosthetics. That I want to be. That's why I'm studying these two areas, so I can create prosthetics that are more efficient for people. So I would like to know some laboratories, that I can apply for internships or something that are actually researching.
Okay, I have to think about that. So I have to think about that and see if,
Yes.
see if I know somebody. I'm sure I do.
You what?
Can you send me an email? Sure. Can you send me an email?
Yeah. I can hear perfectly the audience. Oh, no, not good at all. Yeah, it sounds great. Thank you. Whatever. Yeah, do what you need to do. I can hear you. Are you micing micing it so people can hear? Got it. Cool. Right. Interesting.
Because I'm just looking for, I'm sophomore, so I'm just looking for opportunities.
And you're doing
Veterinary school.
and what kind of stuff?
In what is vet school?
Oh, okay, that's stuff.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so I thought you said that. Okay. Yeah, it was so nice to meet you.
Thank you very
Just
much.
send me an email, and if I don't answer, let's send it.
Alright, thank you very much.
Okay. Real nice to meet you.
Okay. One of my problems, but it's kind of a question. I'm a first generation student. I grew up Hispanic, only white males. Honestly,
Most of them are, but
only
not true.
only males engineers.
You really did awesome.
She did.
So this is about flow.
Is that your fault?
Yeah, thank you.
Is that your fault? No. Oh, okay. But I really, it inspires me.
Thank you.
And a lot of mine is I have an autism experience to my vision.
Different question. Not one.
And I also have
Okay.
the medications, the side effects. It takes me a little bit longer,
You just have to
Yes. And so you need to appropriate
and like you say, when they put you in front of the class for a reason, and everybody's looking at you.
So is it the case
So thank you.
that you build this
But you know, there's a guy who's really works in
or instead do you
I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Access
out
It's at the University of Washington. So they do a lot of visually impaired and blind and deaf. Yeah, and there's guys Richard who's just
instead of
everything.
Yeah.
And he is just you know, these are your support networks.
Yes, right. Yes, if we said we don't really have and the characteristics are could be a format because a fair bit of frequently are supported and yes, yeah, them seeing us if you would join
I'll do anything for students.
Thank you. Thank you. Be inspired. Choose joy. Thank
not understand or anticipate needs, but because they would have no idea. However, you know that if they yes, there's going to be wheelchairs not it's going to get good people who are this person and you have say to me, I said a large I sniff it out, counseling center, you get it.
Okay, I guess
sounds good.
back.
Thank you.
Let's get started with our second keynote speaker. I would like to introduce Dr. Vinod Kumar from Mechanical Engineering Department to come and introduce our next speaker. Dr. Kumar.
Thank you. I think we have Dr. Hines through a Skype from Baltimore. Dr. Hines uses, in fact, a telescope to study anything you see in the sky. I think he wanted to be astronaut, but he have a mild cerebral, some disability that prevented him to become an astronaut. So he decided to kind of study astronomy and astrophysics. He got a bachelor degree from physics and astronomy,
in physics and astronomy from New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology. Got a PhD in astronomy from University of Texas at Austin. And he did a postdoc at University of Arizona. He had been working at a space telescope, I think, for several years. He is also adjunct associate professor at University of New Mexico. He have authored several kind of papers in manuscripts in journals and conference proceedings. Anyway, without kind of taking more time from him, Dr. Hines.
All right, thank you for that introduction. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, great. Well, I want to thank you for inviting me to speak with you today. I apologize for not being able to be there in person. As you'll see a little bit later, one of the reasons I can't be here or there is because of a project I'm working on. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a while. So again, I'm Dean Hines. I work at the Space Telescope Science Institute, which is in Baltimore, Maryland. We operate the Hubble Space Telescope, and we're building the James Webb Space Telescope, and we'll be launching that in a couple of years. So I thought I'd go and tell you a little bit about the beginnings of my life and how I got into science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I especially want to concentrate on the environment that I started in, and I will contrast that with the environment that you all are in today. It's quite a different environment for people with disabilities. I'll tell you a little bit about the goals and objectives that I developed when I was a kid. Everything okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And then tell you a little bit about the path I took and some of the obstacles I ran into, both physically, my physical abilities, also sociologically. Again, things were a little different for me when I was growing up. And then I'll talk a little bit about the achievements I've accomplished. And then take some questions at the end. Right, so back in 1962, when I was born almost 55 years ago, you didn't see people with disabilities very much. You might have seen a veteran from the Vietnam War or something like that in a wheelchair. But people with disabilities just weren't a thing, especially children. If a child was born with disabilities, they were typically put in an institute. They didn't have much chance to go to school or get an education. When I was a kid, I didn't see anybody with a disability until I was at least probably 12 years old. And so it was unusual for people with disabilities just to even be out in society doing anything, much less doing science and technology. Fortunately for me, my parents would have none of that. They were really good about encouraging me. I'll talk a little bit more about that. This is a picture of me when I was 2. I have cerebral palsy, which affects my left side. It makes my left leg really hard to move. My right leg's not too bad. And my left hand's a little atrophied. I don't know if you can see it. It doesn't move too well. But this was 2, and back then, as I said, you could see a lot of people with disabilities. And in fact, for people with cerebral palsy, there wasn't a lot of help either for their health. Unfortunately, for me, my dad was really strict about making sure that I got cared for. In fact, originally I was not supposed to live until I was 3 because they misdiagnosed me. He found somebody who diagnosed it correctly. I had cerebral palsy, and that turns out to be a non-progressive disease. It does mean that you have to do a little bit of extra physical activity that stays flexible. And as I'm finding out, as you get older, it gets more difficult more rapidly than if you didn't have a disability. But my dad found a doctor who had some experience with disabilities, and we tried to work on ways that I could walk. That was an important thing. So this chair, this is me, and you can see on my legs I've got things called twisters. These are straps that wrap around your leg with the idea of twisting their legs out. When I would walk, my legs would further in, sort of trip over my own feet when I walk. And so these things were designed to move my legs out and spread them apart, especially my feet, so I would trip over myself. They were incredibly uncomfortable. You see, I'm kind of smiling here, but I'm really not happy. But it was the best technology at the time. And it did help me learn to walk. Once I was able to walk a little bit, then we went into the more advanced technology. As you can see in a minute, this was the super advanced technology at the time. It was torturous, and it was, but it actually, it kind of worked. If you've ever seen Forrest Gump, the movie, there's the character there who was standing. These are designed to keep my legs straight. One of the problems with cerebral palsy is your muscles don't relax in certain muscles, and so that'll twist your legs or your bones, your limbs, and your bones don't grow straight. So this is designed to take the pressure off your bones so they'll grow straight. Today, they use more advanced technologies that inject your muscles with Botox, which will relax them. And but at the time, this was the top of the technology. So the bad part was these were really uncomfortable, and they were embarrassing because I was the only person in school wearing them, and people would make fun of me. On the other hand, it did allow me to walk. So because of this, my disability, it was pretty clear that I was not going to be able to have a real physically active, intense job. And so early on, when I was a little tiny kid, my parents were actively helping me develop my brain, my intellect, my ability to use my head instead of just my mind. Now, the other thing that was happening at the time was that it was a very exciting time in the world, because some stuff was going on that was pretty neat. The Russians had just launched Sputnik. That's over in the top left. About 5 years before I was born, that kicked off a big push for STEM, for people to get engineering, mathematics, technology, and science degrees. The space race was a good thing. And on the right is our first satellite, top right. That's Tim Pickering, John Van Allen, and Werner von Braun. Werner von Braun was a German scientist who built the B-2, and after the war, he captured him and became a rocket scientist and eventually got us to the moon. You can see on the bottom right is our first rocket launch, and so that was exciting. And then in 1969, I guess, Neil deGrasse was the first person in space. So that was all happening. And in response to that, John F. Kennedy declared that we would put a man on the moon in the 1960s. And so he formed the Mercury astronaut program. There were 7 Mercury astronauts on the left. And I was in about 1962 when this all went on, and I was born in 62. And my parents tell me that the first rocket launch I ever watched on TV was when I was 3 years old. And I didn't miss a launch visually on TV, at least until the mid-80s. So I was sort of wrapped up in that, no matter what. On the right is the first, Johnny Greenberg launched into the first American to orbit Earth. And then later on in the Gemini program, we had the first spacewalk. Gemini was 2 people in a rocket, and that allowed us to practice getting outside of a spacecraft, docking with other spacecraft, which was needed for the moon mission. Now, at the time, my dad was actually working for a contractor for NASA on the Apollo program, and so I was steeped in this environment. And so my parents were really encouraging. They got me all excited about space. I really wanted to be an astronaut, but as I had cerebral palsy, and of course at the time you had to be extremely physically fit. It was very rare to be an astronaut. I realized pretty early on, my parents did too, that I was not going to be able to be an astronaut, and so there would need to be another way for me to get to the stars. was going on at the time was a lot of science fiction and realistic science fiction. And one of the movies that really changed my life, 1967, was 2001: Space Odyssey. I went to see it with my parents. Back in those days, you went for driving, we had a big, huge station wagon, and we piled in that thing and sit and drive, watch movies. What I took away from this, though, was the adventure of space and the importance of astronomy as well. In 2001, we were going to have space stations, we were going to have rockets and ships that would take us to the planet. We would have sophisticated computers that we could play chess with that would go crazy if you lied to them. And it was going to be a really exciting time, and I wanted to be a part of that. I knew that I was primed to take part in this adventure. The other thing that happened was when I was in 4th grade, I read a book called A Wrinkle in Time. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. Even as an adult, it's a wonderful book. This is about a physicist who gets kidnapped and taken to the 4th dimension, and his kids have to go find and rescue him with a couple of witches. Sounds like a silly story, but it's actually quite impressive. And that got me excited. If I could be a physicist, I didn't necessarily have to be an astronaut to explore and have adventure. And so that's what got really excited about science and technology and engineering. So, by 1972, we accomplished our goal of getting to the moon. This is actually Apollo 17, it's not all that. And so, I was fully convinced in 1972, I was in 4th grade, that we were on a path to the 2001 vision where we'd be on the moon, we'd be found the planets. And so that cemented my desire to be an astronomer or a physicist and be in aerospace. The problem was, as I've mentioned before, there weren't a lot of disabled people. In fact, I didn't even know disabled people that were in aeronautics or astronomy or even science or mathematics. I had no role models. That was difficult because you kind of need role models growing up, or even now, I still have role models and people I look up to, mentors, role models, superheroes, if you want to call them that. But fortunately for me, in 1967, there was also a show that came on. It's called Star Trek. Most of you have heard of Star Trek. This was the original show. And this is Mr. Spock. And I bring up Mr. Spock because the character had a huge influence on me, and it really taught me something important. Again, I didn't have any peers, I didn't know any people with disabilities that were successful, and certainly not in science. But Mr. Spock had some disabilities that were different than the humans that were on the ship with him. In particular, he had green skin, green blood, those pointy ears he was so famous for. And he was not really good socially with humans, which happens to me. I wasn't really sociable because I didn't have any people that I could identify with, and so I was kind of shy. But Mr. Spock was still accepted by his friends as peers because he was a scientist, and he was logical, and he solved problems that nobody else on the Enterprise can solve. And so that really said something to me. It said, not only are we headed to a future for adventure, science, exploration, but that in the near future, or actually this is 200 years later, but people like me, people that were different, would be totally accepted. The Enterprise also had people from all types of cultures, and so I was looking at a future where everybody was accepted and everybody had an ability and a purpose and could contribute to the goal and the adventure. So it was very exciting. Now, I learned pretty early on that I wasn't quite like Spock because I had emotions and cry and have self-doubt and wondered why I had disabilities, why did this happen to me? But on the other hand, watching Spock live through his problems, where he also had trouble fitting in and felt sometimes out of place. His peers helped him. So that was a really important thing for me. But again, there was still nobody like me in science and technology. And then along about 1972, somebody hit the scene who changed everything. This is Stephen Hawking. Most of you probably heard of him and seen him or know of him. Stephen Hawking is an astrophysicist. He has Lou Gehrig's disease, which is ALS. I can't remember what A stands for, but it's a sclerosis. What this does is degenerative. Unlike cerebral palsy, his disease progresses. It gets worse and worse. Remarkably, he's still alive at almost 80 and still producing valuable work. The important thing about Stephen Hawking was he was somebody who had a disability, a pretty severe one. At the time I started learning about him, he could still talk, but it was really hard to understand. It was very slurred speech. And in fact, not too long after I discovered him, he had to have interpreters, and then just couldn't talk at all. But even through that disability, his disabilities, he was able to revolutionize astronomy and astrophysics. He was one of the first people to actually work on and prove that black holes should exist, what their properties were. Pretty neat stuff. At the time, he's got some effects named after him. And even just 8 days ago now, there was a huge announcement about neutron stars colliding and producing gravitational waves and also electromagnetic radiation, light. And some of that was part of his prediction. And so it's really exciting to see that somebody with this pretty severe disability used his intellect through science and mathematics to make a prediction that has now been confirmed, albeit 4 years later, but it's a very exciting result. And so here's an example of somebody who persevered, sort of, I got a disability, so what? And today he's so famous that he's been on a rock album with Pink Floyd, he's in movies, he's been in TV shows, even The Simpsons made a couple episodes with him. So that's pretty spectacular. So finally, in the mid-70s, I had somebody I could look up to and mentor. And unfortunately, never actually met him, but I had somebody to look up to. I think that's important. That's important for all of us. And one of the reasons that we're here today. I went to high school, took a lot of classes in math, science. Eventually was able to take some college courses. One of the things I did want to mention before I went to my college career is I talk a lot about STEM. This is what this whole conference is about today. But I want to emphasize that English is very important too. Let me back up to Stephen. Just because you come up with great ideas and you do science and math and technology and engineering, if you can't communicate that to other people, then it's pretty much useless. And being able to communicate effectively means that you need to handle English and be a good writer. One of the things that scientists and mathematicians do especially is publish in journals, or get our ideas peer-reviewed in journals. And it's important that you communicate clearly. And so I want to emphasize how important English is, in addition to the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So you may not want to do it. I didn't. But it's turned out to be one of my most important skills is the ability to communicate, especially in written language. All right. So after high school, I was fortunate enough to during high school, I had a mentor, my science teacher, that told me about this big famous building down in New Mexico. I was born in Albuquerque, so it wasn't far from me. It's in northern Mexico and southern New Mexico. It's called the Very Large Array. This was a new instrument. You can see it down here at the bottom right. It's got 27 radio telescopes that you can point at the sky. And you can make it so that it acts as if it's a telescope that's actually about 13 miles across. And so it's pretty interesting, it's pretty spectacular technology. They just finished building it when I sent it to college. And I was fortunate enough to be admitted to the New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology, New Mexico Tech, which was the university, the college, that helped run the BLA. And when I got there to the New Mexico Tech, I was also fortunate enough to meet a professor who was at the BLA, just starting to work on complex problems about how galaxies with black holes in them behave. And still being a little shy, when you first go to college, it's and you don't know what disability or not. The minute I met him, he said, so let's go work. And I said, well, I'm not sure. Are you sure you want me on? He's like, I don't care if you can't walk real well. Let's go have some fun. Let's do some science. So that was really important to me, to meet somebody who just said, yeah, let's go. I trust you. Let's go do some science. So we did. We pointed the telescopes at the galaxy that looked similar to this one. This isn't the exact galaxy. And we captured radio waves from that galaxy. And radio waves are like electromagnetic radiation, like light on longer wavelengths. It comes from different types of mechanisms. In this particular case, there's a black hole. There's one in this galaxy, and there's also one in this. This is just the radio part. There's a giant black hole that's about 1 billion times more massive than our sun. Black holes you always think of are dark, and it's true. Black holes also capture material and suck it in. When that material is sucked in, it gets hot. When you get something very, very hot with magnetic fields in it, it can spin and produce jets, radio jets. And so what's going on in this thing is that there is a black hole in the center, and it's spewing material out into the nearby universe. Now at the time, this was, and still is, the highest quality image ever made in the radio was for this galaxy. I made this almost 30 years ago. It's still state of the art. Now, a fun fact about this image is about a 30 megabyte image, so not too, but to process the data, I had to have 350 megabyte disks. They were big, they were about, you can see my arms, they were about 3 feet in diameter, and about 1 foot high. They weighed about 40 pounds each, and each one had about 350 megabytes. So that's almost 100 megabytes. Now, sorry, a gigabyte. And if you think about that, your iPhone now, or your cell phone, even your watch, can have up to 64 gigabytes. So thousands of times more than your cellular phone than I had back in 1986 in this huge platter. The other part is that the computer we used was about the size of 5 refrigerators all put next to each other. And so that was state of the art. Things have changed a lot. We could do the whole process. It took me 6 months to make this image and do the process in 10 minutes on my laptop now. But anyway, the reason I'm bringing all this up is I was fortunate enough to be at the forefront of technology and science at the BLA and making an impact. Just like Stephen Hawking, I was able to make an impact on astronomy. After the BLA, I got my bachelor's and master's degrees in physics. I was admitted to the University of Texas in Austin to get a PhD in astronomy. And I spent a lot of time at the McDonald Observatory. In fact, about 320 nights, which is almost a full year, spread out over a 7-year period, observing with telescopes, regular telescopes, kind of measure light that you can see with your eyeballs. And spent most of my time on this, on this telescope, which looks like this. This is called the Stroop telescope. It's an 82-inch telescope. Measuring light from quasars. These are young galaxies with supermassive black holes that are producing lots of energy. So much energy, so much light, you can see them almost to the limits of the edge of the universe. Or I should say edge, because there's no edge to the universe, but the visible universe. And the interesting thing about this, which is kind of fun, is this is one of the instruments. It's pretty small and it's pretty high. You can see that the floor is down here. So we had to stand on like an 8-foot ladder, because at the time we had to use our eyeballs to make sure we still pointed at the object as the object moved, as the Earth rotated underneath it. And that was challenging. So again, somebody with disability standing on an 8-foot ladder was a challenge. In fact, I fell off the ladder one night and broke in the dark. So astronomy can be dangerous. But nevertheless, I was able to, with some help and some aid, spend 300 nights observing on telescopes. And I discovered a class of objects that's a quasar that is buried deeply in dust. And so these are quasars that are covered in material. So even though they're really bright, if you look at them at a certain angle, look at a different angle, you can't actually see them, but they're there. And so that's an interesting discovery. After the University of Texas, I got my PhD, moved on to the University of Arizona as a postdoc in literary research like this. And I was fortunate enough, again, I'm really fortunate, and this happens a lot in science, because science is always developing new things, new technologies, new frontiers. Again, I was at the forefront, was able to work on the infrared camera multi-object spectrometer MIGMOS, which was the very first infrared instrument in space astronomy at this kind of wavelength. I was a postdoc first, and then I was on the instrument development team later, on the team that took the first images. And this was the infrared, in this case, is just a little bit better than your eyeballs can see. You use these for night vision in the military and other things. And so we built this camera, and we launched it on the space shuttle. One of the exciting things about being in science, and especially in astronomy, but I'm in space astronomy, is that again, I get to almost be with astronauts. In fact, I was with astronauts, so I got to see them launch at night. I was one of the invited guests, so I sat with the astronauts on a bench that was only 3 miles from the launch. This was before 9/11, and so we were able to be pretty close to the shuttle, and that was a really amazing experience. Second only to watching my son. But once we launched, the instrument was installed on the Hubble Space Telescope, and we turned it on, and we took the first 2 images, this one and this one, and I took this image. Basically, what these images are showing is, in this one, these are brand new stars, they're forming. They've just formed out of a cloud of dust, and you can't see this with a regular telescope. You have to go to infrared to see it. And this image is the other side of the star formation. This is a dying star. The funny thing about this is you'd expect stars to round, and when they die, you expect to die with material around that's round. And this is anything but round. You can see that this particular object has a structure that looks very odd. I should point out that these aren't the real colors. These are called false color images because, again, you can't see this with your eyeball. So what we do is we assign eyeball colors, blue, red, and sometimes green, RGB, to the different wavelengths so that you can visualize it with your eyes. And there's a star in here that's dying, and it's emitting material on 2 jets, and then we don't know what is going on here. So, to this day, we still have not figured out what's happening in the star. Anyway, the exciting thing is that these are the first images. As part of that, We had a press conference, and to my knowledge, that's the first astronomy press conference that's a disabled astronomer up on stage with a NASA press release. So that was pretty exciting. After mid-Moss, I was still at the University of Arizona. I joined another group to launch another instrument in space on a different telescope. This is another infrared camera. This is the camera over here. And this time, even though it's in the infrared, it's longer wavelength, so we call it thermal infrared. And most of you are familiar with this if you've ever seen a show, a video or at least from a helicopter, it's nighttime, and we're flying around, and we can see the glowing people. This is called thermal emission from the warm bodies. And we can use that property of warm bodies to measure the properties of astronomical things, stars that are forming, that are buried in dust, and newly forming, they're hidden, they're glowing, so that heats the dust, and the dust we can see. You can also look at objects that are very, very distant in the universe with this kind of instrument. So here's the space telescope that we built. Our instrument is down here in this chamber, and we launched it on a Delta II rocket. Again, I was able to be at the launch. In this case, not sitting on bleachers, but hanging out on the beach down in Cape Canaveral. It was a night launch. It's pretty spectacular. These are some of the images that we've taken. Again, I took one of the first 5 images using this instrument, and we released it as a press release. Some of the things that we can do, you see here there's a galaxy where we're learning about the types of stars and galaxies. The blue stuff is young, old stars, the red are newly forming stars. Here's a supernova limit. This is a star that exploded a few thousand years ago. Here's a star like our sun that is dying, and in this case, it's actually round, which is interesting compared to the other one. Here you've got some stars that are forming. Here's a disk galaxy. So that brings us to now. When I moved to Baltimore about 7 years ago, I moved there to join the Space Telescope Science Institute to be working on the James Webb Space Telescope. And in fact, I'm the team lead in charge of operating and making this instrument work. This is the infrared instrument. Here's the James Webb Space Telescope, at least a mock-up of it, meaning a model. And this is, I want to illustrate what kind of new thing that we're doing, again, on the forefront of technology and science. This is the telescope and what it will look like. I don't know if you can see it, there's people down here at the bottom. This is a huge telescope. These sun shields are about the size of an Olympic tennis court, so a couple 100 feet long, about 60 feet wide. This is the telescope. It's about 2 stories high and huge, and it's got this big extension that holds the secondary here. It's way too big to ever launch in a spacecraft as it is. So one of the challenges of James Webb Space Telescope is we have to fold this thing up, which is like a transformer. So we fold these sun shield sheets, we compress them, and then we fold them up, fold this structure up, and then we fold the leads of the telescopes. That's one of our big challenges. So that we can fit it in a rocket and we launch it. And so once we get up into space, we'll fold the telescope remotely, which is also on the side. And then we'll be able to turn on instruments and start doing science. So that's my current job, and what I spend most of my time doing. One of the exciting things about being part of a project like this, and this would apply to other projects as well, particle accelerator, I don't know if you're working on some very biological technology, if you're building a bridge or whatever, you're able to actually be in the middle of it. And this is the James Webb Space Telescope where it was being assembled at Goddard Space Flight Center, which is about 35 miles south of Space Telescope Science Institute. This is a gigantic cleaner, and you can see people down here with what we call bubble suits that protects the instruments and the telescope from dust and garbage that comes off. A few of these instruments are pretty dirty animals. We have dandruff and we shed skin cells, and so you don't want that on your instruments. Here's the telescope, here's the mirrors. In this case, it's in its folded position. The mirrors that are normally out here are folded back, and the structure is folded back, being ready to ship to Johnson Space Center. This was back in April this year. It was shipped there in May, and we just spent the last 7 months testing it at Johnson. Here is the telescope at Johnson Space Center. Inside a big chamber, you can see it's unfolded now. There's the full mirrors, there's people again. And then we've got this big structure here that holds the secondary mirror. This chamber is it's kind of neat. It allows us to put a vacuum in the telescope to simulate space. It just doesn't have a lot of air molecules in it. It's a vacuum basically, so you couldn't breathe. And we need to simulate how our telescope would behave in space. It's also very cold where our telescope's going to be. It's minus 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And so we need to be able to simulate that, make sure that the telescope functions before we launch it into space. So we put it in this chamber, we close, there's a door right here we close. We pump out all of the air. We cool it down with liquid helium, and then we test it. Make sure that the optics work correctly, we've got a light source up here shining. I want to make sure that the mirrors are correctly configured. You may remember that the Hubble Space Telescope had a bad mirror initially and we had to go and repair it, but we're not going to be able to go and repair this telescope. So we have to make absolutely certain it works on the ground before we launch it. Now, an interesting historical fact is that this chamber has been around a very long time. It was the chamber that was used to do testing of the Apollo capsule and the command module and the lunar lander. So the same thing, same conditions exist with both spacecraft, and so we needed to make sure that this spacecraft would work. In that case, we needed to preserve humans, and so a catastrophe, a leak, a failure in those components would be catastrophic. We lost astronauts. In this case, we're not going to lose astronauts, but we're going to lose a huge investment. And if you've ever seen the first Transformers movie, they also use this chamber as a prop. Now, we're just finishing testing of this telescope, and we'll pull it out of the chamber next month. And so that's the reason I couldn't join you live today, is I'm in charge of some of the tests, and I have to be here in Baltimore. Even though this is in Johnson, at Houston, we're doing the data reduction here at Space Telescope, and I'm doing some of the tests. So, pretty exciting. One of the other things about being an astronomer, or even being science related, as long as you're in the industry or something, is you can be creative. So you've seen that I've worked on several projects. I didn't invent those projects. I was fortunate enough to be part of them and part of the development of them. But I wasn't able to, I didn't do them from scratch. But science and math, engineering and technology often lets you create things from scratch. And one of the things I've been doing is building small instruments that can be used to investigate astronomical phenomenon. And in this particular case, I built a camera that's called polarimeter that allows me to study material that's around the sun, but it's hard to do from the ground because I need to get really close to the sun. And so the only time I can study this material is when there's a solar eclipse, total solar eclipse. And it turned out that I had an opportunity in 2015 to join one of my other colleagues to fly in an airplane at Düsseldorf, Germany. My instrument built it into one of the aircraft windows. And I was able, fortunately, to take my son with me too. That's him, that's me, my son. And we flew in this airplane with a bunch of tourists through the total solar eclipse. So that let us stay in this eclipse longer than normal. The eclipse lasted a little under 3 minutes on the ground, and we were able to get almost 3.5 minutes by flying through the shadow. And I really take my camera and take pictures of this material around the sun. And so I bring this up for a couple of reasons. Like I said, there's a lot of creativity in STEM careers. I proposed to build this instrument to NASA. I put in a proposal, again, having good English skills, writing skills. I wrote a proposal, telling them what I wanted to do, how much money I needed, and they were giving me funds. I was able to build the instrument. I'll show you a picture of me building it behind. And then I was able to get funding to fly in this airplane and take the experience. All right. The other thing about this is, oftentimes in science and technology, in your jobs, you get to travel all over the world and meet lots of great people. The people in science and math are typically pretty neat people. All right. So that's a lot about my career and how I got into science. I also wanted to back up a little bit and say that it's not just about science, technology, engineering, and math. There are other things as well that you can do if you set your mind to it. And I just wanted to share with you a few other things that I've done because of the support I've gotten from my family and friends and the changing attitude of the world towards people with disabilities. So, I was fortunate enough to be, well, in fact, I wanted to play music. Music's another important thing that plays into science, technology, engineering, and mathematics because it helps you be creative. You really need that creative potential. It really helps. I was fortunate enough to, well, I wanted to play music, and I wasn't able to do that with most other instruments, but drums played drums and bands for several years. And then, hang on a second. Gregor. I apologize. When you work from home, sometimes something happens in the background. I was able to play drums, still do. That's pretty fun. It's interesting that, how much support I get when I play on stage nowadays, but how surprised people were when I was younger that somebody like me could play drums. I've scuba dived all over the world. I need some technology to help me. So instead of the normal scuba equipment, we usually used to have a buoyancy compensator, they call it BC, that help you go up and down. I was one of the first to have it mounted to your back so that I could scuba dive. And then I'm also a captain in the support, which is the U.S. Auxiliary. And I want to specifically talk about this because a lot of people are surprised that people with disabilities can participate in something like that. It turns out, though, the Civil Air Patrol has some physical requirements. We actually have people with autism. The commander also has cerebral palsy, and we even have somebody in a wheelchair who's actively participating and contributing to the Air Force Auxiliary. So you can do that too. Anybody nowadays, again, compared to what it was like when I was younger, things have come a long way, and there's a lot of opportunity, not just in science and mathematics and engineering and technology and everything. So that's a great thing that's happening and helps you in your potential. All right, so my dad told me a long time ago that I could accomplish when I set my mind to, and I think that you can too. Obviously, we're here today, which means that you're interested in these kinds of topics and that you have the motivation and the drive to investigate these kinds of careers. And you can certainly do it. I just pointed out this is my instrument right here that I showed you when we took on the airplane. So with that, I want to thank you for your time, and I'd be glad to take some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Hines, for your wonderful talk, and this is really inspirational for our students, who are here. And I can't say how much I'm thankful to you. I know it's hard to spare some time out of your work schedule to give a presentation like this, but I really want to thank from the bottom of my heart and from our department, Cass, and on behalf of UTEP. Thank you so much. And I want to ask audience if they have any questions for Dean Hines. Please, go ahead.
You might need to repeat the question if I can't hear it.
Okay, sure, I'll do that. Anybody in the audience who have questions? Yes.
I have a question about the project you're doing.
I have a question about the project you're doing. Is it with NASA, and how long is it going to take till it's ready? And what exactly do you do?
Right. So the James Webb Space Telescope, that's what you're asking about?
Yes, yes.
Right. So we just got out, as I mentioned, we just got out of that testing at Johnson Space Center. We now have to take the telescope and ship it to California, where it will be mounted to the spacecraft. So right now it's just a telescope with the instruments on it. We have to bolt it to a spacecraft as well. And we have to hook up those big solar sun shield. Let me explain the sun shield real quick and then I'll finish answering your question. That sun shield is to protect the telescope. The telescope has to be really cold. And the sun, if you're in the sun, even in space, you get real hot. Astronauts will tell you that when you're in the sun, you have to have basically a cooler on your spacesuit to keep you cool. And then when you go into the shade, you have to have a heater to keep you warm. Well, our instruments won't work if they're hot. And so we have that huge sunshade, and that thing has to be bolted to the spacecraft as well. And so that's going to take about 9 months to do. And so that will take us through almost next summer.
Also, that's to the extreme.
Then we have...
Sorry, go ahead.
Say again?
No, that's to the extreme where you're in the shade for like a minute and then you're freezing. And you're on the outside and it's scorching.
Right. So, this telescope is going to be, it's not going to be orbiting the Earth, it's going to be out at what's called L2, Earth Moon L2, I'm sorry, Earth Sun L2, which is out past the orbit of the Moon, and we'll never let it look at the Sun, so that sun shield will protect it. After we bolt it, the whole thing together, then we have to ship the telescope down to French Guiana, which is in South America. We have to go through the Panama Canal to launch on an Ariane 5 rocket, which is given to us by the European Space Agency. So, having said all of that, by the time we're all finished and ready to launch, it's going to be sometime in 2019, probably around May of 2019. So, a little 2 years from now.
I'm excited, honestly. I want to see if it's out, yeah, honestly. So, I'll be watching it.
I will say that this was designed in 1998, and we've been working to build it for the last almost 20 years.
1998, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other question?
Yeah, Dr. Hines, I think you are one of the role model for most of us. I think just maybe some comments and advice as a faculty, as a professor, what we can do to increase the participation. We do have a lot of misunderstanding, misconception, barriers also from students and the parents side, what they can do to kind of help eliminate or remove or reduce the barriers in learning, especially related to STEM.
Okay, that's a good question. Aside from a bias, just which is like I said, is getting out there. People today understand that people with disabilities, just because you can't walk or you can't use your hand or you have a little trouble talking, doesn't mean you can't do intellectual things. That doesn't mean you're dumb. When I was a kid, a lot of times people just see me walk and they think automatically I was stupid, couldn't think. And so getting rid of those biases is important. Making access. A lot of old universities getting better, but there's still, I went into this several times, there's still sometimes steps, and that's hard. Having electronic communication is important. One of the great things about modern technology is that I'm able to talk to you all today. I'm not there personally, but I'm able to talk to you, and so that helps as well. I've got friends who are deaf, they can't hear, but yet they can, obviously do astronomy. They just have to have some help. So with voice recognition technology now, one of these things that can happen is they can be on a teleconference, and we can all be talking, and they can pick up the words on the bottom. On the flip side of that, we even have some blind people working in astronomy, and that surprises people. But the way we work with that is we're developing technology that will allow sound. For one thing, you can look at the spectrum and translate that into sounds. You can also have tactile representations of astronomical images. So I guess my point is make things as easy as you can for people, especially physical disabilities. Sometimes it's real easy. Sometimes it's going to take a little extra technology, but definitely, and sometimes it may take people longer. It takes me a little longer to get to work every day, and so. And the other thing is my job and work. They know that if it's snowing and it's slippery out, I don't come to work. I work from home. So being more flexible as well helps. And I guess that's all I can say at the moment. Just employ technology as much as you can. Get help from us. I mean, that's another big thing. Departments that deal with institutes like Space Telescope Institute, where we do have several disabled people, can provide you with help as well. This thing where I talked about, the tactile maps for astronomy, that was developed at Space Telescope Science Institute.
Thank you. I have one question, and at the college level, we have great offices like Cass, at UTEP, and other universities. What would be your recommendation for the K through 12 schools? That sometimes that is the pipeline for STEM in college. So what would be your recommendation for educators in the K through 12 or administrators to acknowledge that, knowledge that our students with disabilities have, and recognize them and actually help them to get to the college level and then major in STEM fields?
Right. As for colleges themselves, is the attitude is going to help a lot. So as long as teachers are saying anybody that, regardless of your ability, physically, and even in many cases mentally, you can still contribute to STEM. You can be part of it. There are people who are terrible at certain types of mathematics. I'll confess I'm one of them. But that doesn't mean I can't be effective in the field. So that's one thing. The other thing is I work with a teacher of the year in Pennsylvania, and one of the things we do with his class is, and several other schools that he's associated with, is we do exactly what we're doing right now. Is we have me and other speakers with disabilities and scientists give talks, or if they can, they visit the classrooms and show people that people with disabilities can actually have a long-term career. The other thing that is important is encourage kids with disabilities to be part of science fairs. That was something that my parents, I didn't mention this, but they were strongly encouraging for me to do that. And that could be a little intimidating, but give them support for that. That will help as well. Expose them. And I guess the other thing is, because a lot of people with disabilities are shy and are even embarrassed sometimes. Provide them opportunities where they can present themselves in an environment where they can start to get comfortable in their own skin and communicate well with others. I guess that's my main thing. I'm not an expert at the K through 12 level, but I would encourage you, anybody, if you want to contact me, and I'll get you in touch with Michael Slow School, who's been working on some of these ideas.
Hi, thank you for speaking today. I really enjoyed it. My daughter's interested in science, particularly your field. 2 questions. One, is this going to be available for my daughter to view? I insisted she go to her physics class instead of coming here, and I'm sorry. And secondly, being that you're in an institution which can foster at a higher level students' knowledge about space and astronomy, are you partnering with universities, say with UTEP even, where you can have a disabled student be on staff or being mentored by people in your organization? I think it really is important for people at your level to have those kind of opportunities so they can say, I am understanding this world and this is what I want to do and I can contribute. Thank you.
Okay, your first question is, I don't know if this was recorded or not. I gave a similar talk, in fact, almost identical, in North Carolina in 2015, and that is on video, and so we can point you to that. And as far as partnering, it's a complicated thing for Space Telescope Science Institute because we're constrained by some of NASA's rules. NASA's gone on and off about supporting public outreach. Sometimes they're really into it, and so we can do things like that. Other times we can't. What we can do is provide materials and get you in contact with our Office of Public Outreach. Having said that, I'm also affiliated with Space Science Institute, so SSI, not STSCI, and they're in Boulder, Colorado. I'm a senior scientist there as well. And they are very much into public outreach and developing educational materials for both the classroom and the general public. Sorry about that. I can also help people get in touch with them. But yeah, I agree. Partnerships with institutions are important. Now, the one thing I will say is, at the college level, not at the high school level, although it's happened a couple times, we do have summer intern programs at the Space Telescope, and that's where we have had several people with disabilities engaged, and then they go back to their institutions and spread the word. So that's one way to do that.
Thank you very much.
And I will say one thing about working from home, which I am today, and having a teenager, sometimes he comes barge me and makes noise, so that's what that was. All right.
Once again, thank you, Dean Hines, for your wonderful insights and reflections, and would be highly motivational to our students and our audience here.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really excited to see how everybody that's come out. Go out and do it.
We were glad that technology made us way, this provided us equal access, and we could have your talk here in El Paso, Texas, all the way from Baltimore. So thank you once again, Dean Hines. I'll be in touch with you, so we can maybe look some things beyond today, so.
Sounds great. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Well, I know this talk was over, but I would like to invite you to join us for Resource Fair in Centennial Plaza. It's already running, started at 10 o'clock. So you are more than welcome to come and visit our exhibits. We have more than 50 exhibits right now that represent community agencies, UTEP departments, programs, and service providers. So you can talk to representatives from different areas and get to learn more about the resources available in the community. We also have some lunch activities going on. We are already having some free pizza, so if anybody is hungry, go ahead. And at 12, we also have Dr. Skateboard's presentation on Accommodation. He is looking forward to seeing you all there, so go ahead and join him. And we also have paper airplane competition, so any students want to participate, please go ahead. We also have panel discussion at 2 o'clock right in this room, so I know some of the panelists are already here, so you guys are more than welcome to come and join us for that. So with this, I would like to conclude this program. Thank you everyone for joining us today.
Just wanted to get a chance to meet you. My name is Martha.
Hi, Martha.
Nice to meet you. Thank you. So you live in Essex?
I do, yeah.
What area?
So I live sort of in a strange area. It's like very, very into Los Angeles.
I'm over there, but I don't know. Like,
Yes. Or do you live in Los Angeles?
No, I live here.
Oh, do you? Yeah, it's towards the mountains. So if you're driving up from El
That was
Paso,
a
on the east side, you'll see all these pecan trees.
Oh, okay.
We live right